Hello everyone, myself Krishna. In this video, I am going to explain about queue activities like postpone transaction item activity, wait queue item activity, and bulk add queue items activities in UiPath Studio. So let's get started. Usually for the bot process, first we will get the input data and then we will validate the input data is in the expected format or not. In case if the input data is not in the expected format, we will throw the business exception, right? Instead of throwing the business exception, if you want to reprocess the queue item after some time, we can use the postpone transaction item activity. So let's take in a simple scenario and implement the logic to understand this activity in better way. In the UiPath Orchestrator, in the test1 queue, I have added 3 queue items. In each queue item, I have mentioned the notepad file path. Here my requirement is I want to check the file path is available or not. In case if the file path is available, I want to read the notepad file and then I want to display the text in the output panel and then I want to change the status to successful. In case if the file path is not available, I want to postpone the queue item for 1 hour. So let's see how we can implement this logic. So first we need to get the queue item. So for that I am going to take an activity get transaction item. In the queue name section I am going to mention the queue name as test1. So here we need to create a variable. Right. So as we are processing all the queue items, so we need to check whether the queue items are available or not. So for that I am going to take an flow decision activity. So transaction item is nothing. So I am going to take one log message. So if the condition is true, that means all the queue items has been processed. So here I am going to take one log message to display the reference number. I am going to take one more flow decision activity to verify the notepad file path is available or not. So here I am going to mention the expression file.exist transaction item dot specific content. So the key is file path dot toString. So here I am going to take one sequence. So inside that I am going to take one log message. So here I am going to mention the expression to read the notepad file dot read all text, and then I am going to mention the file path. Right, and then we need to set the status to successful. Right, so in case the file path is not available, so we need to postpone the transaction item for 1 hour. So here I am going to take an activity postpone transaction item. So here we need to pass the variable transaction item. So in the postpone section, we need to mention till what time you wanted to postpone the transaction. So here I am going to mention the expression datetime dot now dot add hours 1, right? So if you want, we can mention the deadline as well. So for now, I am not mentioning any deadline. So after completion of each transaction, we need to get the transactions again. So here we are getting the transaction, and if transaction is nothing, that means there are no new transactions are available in the selected queue. So the process will end here. Then we are logging the reference number, and here we are checking the file path is available or not. If available, we will going to read the notepad file and set this status as successful. So if the file path is not available, we will going to postpone the transaction, right? So let's save and run the process and verify the output. Now the process execution has been completed. So if you open the output panel, we can see P1. So this is the text from the notepad file. PO2. So this is the PO2 notepad file. For PO3, file not found, right? So let me go to the UiPath Orchestrator. So let's refresh. So PO1 and PO2 are successful and PO3 has been postponed for 1 hour. Alright. Wait queue item is same like user events in the UiPath. In the attended process and background process, if we want to start your process as soon as new queue item added in the queue, we can use the wait queue item activity. This activity will wait for the new queue items, right? As soon as the new queue items are added, the next steps will be performed. So for this activity, we need to mention the queue name. So here I am selecting the queue name as test1. The output will give us the transaction item. So here I am mentioning the transaction item. If you want to wait for a specific reference queue items, here you can mention the reference, and then here you can select the filter strategy, either start with or equal, right? As soon as the new queue item added, so the process will start and the queue status will changes from new to in progress, and after completion of our business logic we need to set the status, right? Here I am going to take one message box to display the reference number. Transaction item dot reference, right? So let's go to the UiPath Orchestrator. Here in the UiPath Orchestrator, in the test1 queue, we have one new queue item is available, right? So let's run the process. So the reference number is PO3, right? Now the process has been completed. So if you go to the UiPath Orchestrator, let's refresh. So the status has been changed to in progress, right? In the test1 queue, we don't have any new queue items are available, right? Now let's run the process and see what will happen. So it is continuously waiting for the new queue items. So as soon as the new queue item added, so the process execution will continue, right? So let me add a new queue item in the test1 queue. To create the new queue item, I am going to clone the existing successful queue item. Click on clone. So here I am going to change the reference number to PO4 and click on create new queue item. As soon as I click on create a queue item, the new queue item will be created and the UiPath Studio process will continue with the next steps. So click on create a queue item. So here we can find the message box and the reference number is PO4, right? Now the process execution has been completed. In case if you want to continuously look for new queue items, then you can give a connection to wait queue item activity. So let's save and run the process. So let's go to the UiPath Orchestrator. So here I am going to create a new queue item PO6. So here you can see PO6. Again I am going to create a new queue item, right? Using the data table, if we want to create a multiple queue items at a time, we can use the bulk add queue items activity. Here I have created one input file. So this is the input file Acme work item. So here I have mentioned few column details. So let's see how we can read and create a multiple queue items using this input file. So here first thing we need to read the Excel file. So for that I am going to take an activity, read range workbook activity. So here I am going to pass the file path and the sheet name would be sheet 1. So for this activity in the queue name we need to select the queue name where you wanted to add the queue item and then we need to mention the data table, right? For bulk add queue items activity we have an option commit type. So here we have two options are available, all or nothing, process or independently. If you select all or nothing, that means all the rows information will going to add in the UiPath Orchestrator queue in case of no issues. In case any issues, all the rows will not going to add in the UiPath Orchestrator queue. In case if you select process all independently, means the rows which are having issues, those rows only will not going to add in the UiPath Orchestrator queue. The remaining rows will be added, right? So here I am selecting all or nothing. The output of the bulk add queue items activity will give us the result as a data table. So here I am going to create a data table as dt1. So those rows issues, so those rows we will get in the dt1, right? So here I am going to take an upload decision to verify any issues in adding the rows information in the UiPath Orchestrator queue. So in case of any issues, so we will have a details in the dt1 variable, dt1.rows.count is greater than 0, right? So here I am going to take one log message and here I am going to display message issue rows dt1.rows.count toString. For successful scenario, I am going to mention no issues, right? So let's go to the UiPath Orchestrator. So here for test 3 queue, we don't have any queue items are added, right? So let's run the process. Now the process execution has been completed, and if you go to the output panel, so no issues, right? So let's refresh. So here you can see the details are added, and here in the specific data you can find the all the columns information, right? The status is showing new, and the priority by default it is coming as normal, right? So if you see here, we don't have priority, deadline, and postpone details are available, right? So here for bulk add queue items activity, we don't have any properties to add the priority, reference number, deadline, and postpone details, right? So here we can do one thing, we can add these details in the input Excel file with their respective column names, and then those details will be available for the queue items, right? So let me open the input Excel file. So first I am going to add the reference. So here the column name should exactly match with the add queue item column names, right? So let me add the reference column name. So my reference would be work ID. So here I am going to copy all the work IDs and paste here, right? And then I am going to mention the priority. So let me copy the column name, priority. So the priority we can mention in two ways, whether you can mention low, normal, high, or else we can mention the numbers. So 0 means high priority, 1 means normal priority, and 2 means low priority. So here I am going to mention the number 0, 1, 2, right? And then I am going to mention the postpone date. So here I am going to mention the date, right? So in this format I have mentioned. So let me drag this line. So in the same way I am going to mention the deadline. So let me copy these dates. So here I am going to change the date. So now we have added the reference, priority, postpone, and deadline, right? Now let's save. Let's close the Excel file. Now let's run the process and verify the output. Now the process execution has been completed. In the output we can see no issues, right? So let's go to the UiPath Orchestrator. So let's refresh. So here we can find the reference and the priority, low, normal, high. So this is the deadline and postpone date, right? So basically the deadline and the postpone date will be shown in the UTC format,